Critical math. Here we are, the last module or last lesson of module 5. We did it, guys. We're going to do some problem solving and some word problems with decimals. Okay. Our objectives in this lesson are to read and solve a word problem using the algorithms for operations with decimals and whole numbers, and solve problems that involve both fractions and decimal numbers. So we're going to actually go back to fractions as well, which means we need to remember our benchmark fractions. Let me move this up a little bit. Okay. So we need to remember what fractions are the same as decimals and decimals are the same as fractions. And we're going to do those really common ones. Those are probably going to be the ones you see in your problems most often. But remember, if you ever are struggling to turn a decimal into a fraction, you can always just put it over the whole number and reduce. So for example, 0.5 is 5/10. And then I can simplify by dividing by 5 and turn it into 1/2. So that's how I know that this fraction is the same as 1/2. Okay, 33 hundredths is 33 over 100. Okay, and then I can divide to figure out what that one is. And this guy is going to be close to 1/3. Okay, this really repeating decimal here, but if you use that technique, that can help you if you're in a bind, or we memorize these benchmark fractions and decimals. Okay, so we should know that 0.33 or 333 repeating with that little bar over it is 1/3. 0.5 or 5/10 is 1/2. How do I write a number 1 as a decimal? Well, I put that ghost decimal and that ghost 0 behind it. 1/4 is like a quarter, 25 cents, a quarter of $1. 1/5, we worked on this one a lot, is the same as 2/10, which is the same as 0.2. All right, this one, we're going to do process of elimination. I've got 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5. This is 1/6. And then down here is not a 7th. 7ths are kind of weird, but this one is an 1/8. You're going to see 8ths probably more often than 7ths, although sometimes you see 7ths. Okay, and then we've got a 10th at the end, which is just 0.1. It's the opposite of 1, actually. 1.0, 0.1. Another thing which we kind of talked about a little bit, and since we've been doing division, you could do this now, is if I have a fraction like 1/7 and I want to turn it into a decimal, I just divide the numerator divided by the denominator. Oopsies, let me go back. So that's going to look like this, 1 divided by 7, okay? And here you can see, because 7 cannot go into 1 evenly, I need to add a ghost decimal and a ghost 0, and then go from there. So 7 can go into 10 once. Add that ghost 0. 7 goes into 30 4 times, that's 28. Add the ghost 0. 7 goes into 20 2 times? Yeah. 14. 6. Oh, 7 goes into 60. And you can kind of see why we didn't put 1/7 on. Is because it's going to continue on for a long time. But if I needed to estimate it, this would be my estimation here. I could round it to the nearest hundredth to make 0.14. That would be right here between 1/6 and 1/8. That would be an approximation. Okay, so write these down in your note. Oopsies. Write these down in your notes. Make sure you have these. Memorize these. Take notes on the little tips and tricks we just talked about how you can put a decimal over its place value, a 10th or a 100th, and simplify it to turn it into a fraction. Or how you can divide the top, the numerator, by the denominator in a fraction to turn it into a decimal. Okay, you're going to need that when solving problems with fractions and decimals. All right, second part. We have that trick for working with word problems is the no-need plan. Remember, know is what you know in the problem, need is what you need to know, and plan is making a plan. You can underline, circle, highlight these word problems to figure out what you need to do. Okay? No, you're going to identify what you know about the problem and analyze and highlight or underline important facts. Need. What is the problem asking you to find? Do you need any other information to solve this problem? And plan. Make a plan. What are you going to do first, second, third? Do you need to add, subtract, divide, or multiply? Hopefully you have some words in your head that help you remember these tricks or these operations. All right, here's what we're going to start with. Naomi earned $54 mowing lawns in 2 days. She worked 2.5 hours yesterday and 4.25 hours today. If Naomi was paid the same amount for every hour she works, how much did she earn per hour? Oh, excuse me. How much did she earn per hour? All right, what do we know? We know that she earns $54 total in 2 days. We know that she worked 2.5 hours yesterday and 4.25 hours today. We need to know how much she earned per hour. I guess you could say we also know that she's paid the same amount for every hour. So we know it's going to be an even split. So let's come up with our plan. Okay, because this number here is in a fraction form and this number here is in a decimal form, we're going to want to turn them to the same format. So we actually do need to know what is 2.5 as a decimal. You could turn all of these into fraction format and do them as fractions, but I think decimals are a little easier. So that's what we need to figure out first. Okay, and if you go back to our chart above, you'll know that 1/2 is 0.5, so this is going to be 2.5 hours for yesterday and 4.25 hours today. So my plan will be to add the hours together so I can get a total. That's what I'm going to do first. And then I need to figure out, so if I earn $54 in 2 days and I did that with so many hours, if I'm going to figure out how much per hour, I'm going to have to divide. The word per here should give you a hint to divide. Okay. So now I have my plan. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to divide my total hours, or not divide my total hours. I'm going to divide 54 by my total hours. All right, so let's plan it out. Okay, so I said I was going to add, so we're going to do the 2.5 times the 4.25. So that's 6.75 hours total that she worked. And now I'm going to take 54 and I'm going to divide that by 6.75. Decimal. I know I'm going to need some zeros there. All right. I don't have a whole number divisor, so I'm going to move my decimal to the end 2 places. Move my decimal 2 places here. So my decimal point is actually going to go way over there. So let's get rid of that. And I'm going to do 675 into 5,400. So it does not go into 5 or 54. It does not go into 540. So I'm going to take a minute and do some math to figure out how many times it does go in. Well, what do you know? I took a guess here at 8 because I knew that like 6 times 9 is going to be 54. So I went down 1. And it ended up being exactly what I needed. So I'm going to put an 8 here and subtract and I get a 0. And because I've used up all my decimal, like my place values here, and because my remainder is 0, I know that my answer here is going to be $8 per hour. And that's what we're doing. We're using our knowledge of fractions and decimals, and we're using our knowledge of division and addition, subtraction, multiplication, any of those operations, and we're going to solve word problems, okay? If you break them down and take your time, you can get them done. All right, here's another one. Each part of a multi-part question on a test is worth the same number of points. The whole question is worth 37.5 points. Roxy got 1/2 of the parts of a question correct. How many points did Roxy receive? Each part is worth the same number. So these are the things we know. The whole question is 37.5 points. She got 1/2 of the parts correct. So we need to figure out, what did she get on the test? So we need to kind of break this down, right? So the whole test was 37.5 points, or the whole question, and she got 1/2 of 37.5, and that's what we're trying to figure out. What is 1/2 of 37.5? This word "of" means multiplication. When I want to find 1/2 of something, I'm multiplying it by 1/2. So that's what my plan is going to be. I'm going to do 37.5 times 1/2, or 0.5 in decimal format. Go ahead and multiply that out and come back and check in with us. Once I multiply those two things together, I get 18.75. So Roxy got 18.75 points. All right, let's try one more. Daniela buys 6 1/5 yard of blue fabric and 5.4 yards of red fabric. If the blue and red fabric cost the same amount per yard, and Casey pays $58 for all of the fabric, what is the cost per yard? All right, the yellow is the things we know, and the highlighted purple is what we're trying to find. I know that I'm going to have to add those two fabrics together to find the total amount of fabric. I know that cost per yard means per is hinting towards division, so I'm going to do the dollars divided by the total to get per yard, the price per yard. And I know that 6 1/5 is the same as 6.2 based upon the chart we filled out earlier about 1/5 and fractions and decimals. So I'm going to go ahead and do my plan. I'm going to add the blue and red together and then divide 58 by that total. Okay, so I added them together, got 11.6 yards, did my division, it went in evenly 5 times, so $5 per yard is my cost. Okay, number 3, Harold bought 3 pounds of red apples and 4 1/5 pounds of green apples from the grocery store, where both kinds of apples are $1.75 a pound. How much did he spend on apples? All right, 3 pounds of red apples and 4.2 pounds of green apples added together will get me the total apples. If I take the total apples times $1.75, which is how much they are per pound, then I'll get my total price. So I got 7.2 pounds of apples total times $1.75 each, and I got $12.60. All right, that is what we were working on. So we're going to do some more practice in class the next day. You're supposed to be paying attention to your word problems, what's going on inside of them. Remember, they are a story. They are telling you what's going on. So as long as you are analyzing and highlighting and breaking apart those problems, they shouldn't be too difficult. And make a plan, and you've got it. See you later.